What's going on, YouTube? Snowflocky's emails here today with a new deck profile. This is my Pendulum Switch stun deck, the little trap control based deck that I built around the interesting mechanics of Pendulum Switch, a card that I was playing around with when I built my amorphage deck. And of course, I found had some interesting interactions with other Pendulum cards, wanted to see what things I could do with it. And I found Aether, the Evil Empowering Dragon, which is a pretty cool card that every time it's normal or special summon can banish a monster. And so I built a little deck around using Pendulum Switch to constantly summon it, pull it back, and resummon it to constantly banish opponent's monsters. And of course, it gets it to dodge things and stuff like that. So with that said, let's get into the cards. So starting off with our monsters, I'm playing 2 copies of Aether, the Evil Empowering Dragon. Pretty interesting pendulum monster. It's a little 4 scale, 6-star monster with 2300 attack. It has a pendulum effect, but that doesn't matter. Basically, this card is only in this deck for its regular effect, which is when this card is normal or special summon. You can target one monster on the field and banish it. So that's pretty cool. It is a targeted removal, which, can be countered, but, banishing a card is cool. And it's in this deck, we're going to be summoning this card multiple times and then constantly pulling it back out only to resummon it. So, we're going to be able to banish cards multiple times off this. And it's pretty cool. 2300 attack, not as high as I would like a little more, but it's perfectly doable. It just means sometimes we could be walled by an opponent's monster, which makes me consider maybe having to play a copy of Moon Mirror Shield or 2 in the deck. But we'll see. But right now, that's kind of the basis of it. The deck is centered around this card and summoning it out in and out of the Pendulum Zone so that we can banish monsters our opponent controls. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon. Pretty cool card that I had from my Morphage deck, but works here too. It's got its own effects. It's got a lot of effects, but basically for this deck, all you need to know is that this card, of course, you can pay 500 life points and discard this card from your hand to add a level 8 or lower dragon pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. So this card's mostly in here so that we can use it to search Aether. We want to get Aether as quickly as possible, so having 3 of these cards that can search it is a big deal. It's just a free searcher for Aether, and the deck's built around Aether, so we want to play it. And then last for our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Performance Pal Skullbat Skullcrobat Joker. And Skullcrobat Joker is of course nice because when this card is normal summon, you can add a Performance Pal monster, or an Odd Eyes monster, which is what we're doing in this case, from our deck to our hand. So we're mostly playing this card because this gets us Revolution Dragon, and Revolution Dragon can get us Aether, the Evil Empowering Dragon. Also just gives us another monster that we can normal summon out, which is pretty cool. And so another good card to have in this deck. And that's basically it for the monsters. We're going all in on Aether, and everything else is to get out Aether. Next, moving into our spell cards, I'm playing 1 copy of Duelist Alliance. This card says that if there's a card in a Pendulum Zone, you can add a Pendulum monster, or Pendulum Spell or Trap from the deck to our hand. We can only use this card once per turn, so that's pretty nice. Any of these cards, any of our monsters can be played in the Pendulum Zone, and so if we have that and Duelist Alliance, we want to use it because this grabs us our copy of Pendulum Switch, which is our main playstyle the whole deck is built around. And Duelist Alliance is a pretty good card. Only in here as a 1-of because we can only use it once per turn. I just don't want to see 2, and we have a lot of deep digging draw power for this stuff anyway. Next, I'm playing a copy of Fury of Karyushin. Fury of Karyushin is nice. It adds Torrential Tribute from the deck to our hand. This is a trap control deck, and Torrential Tribute is a very good card. Having a way to search it is very handy. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Plenty of turns where we don't need to special summon on our turn, so Pot of Duality is a good consistency tool for us. We reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, add 1 to our hand, shuffle the rest back in exchange for not special summoning. That's fine. We can give up special summoning in order to find a good Floodgate or Pendulum Switch to get things going. Whichever card we're missing and would like to see, Pot of Duality can get it for us. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance, another deck where we're not making much in the extra deck. We're mostly just revolving around bouncing Aether and using trap cards to stun our opponent out of the game. So we're going to turn that extra deck into draw power. We're going to banish 6 extra deck cards to draw 2. Now, of course, we can't use any other drawing cards, but that is perfectly fine. And last, for spells, I'm playing a Card of Demise. Card of Demise is a good one of to, dig cards deeper in our deck, reload our hand with more trap cards to set. So we draw until we have 3 cards, and in exchange, all we have to do is not special summon. Our opponent doesn't take any more battle damage after this card's played, and we have to discard everything in our hand at the end of the turn. Not a big deal because most of what we were playing are trap cards or pendulum monsters that we want to be putting in our pendulum zone anyway in order to summon them on our opponent's turn. So, we're not going to lose out too much on this. And of course, once we're already set up, top decking the 1 card of Demise is great because it can just get us a bunch more trap cards if we've already played through some trap cards. And that is it for the spells. Moving into our trap cards here, I am playing 3 copies of Pendulum Switch. Pendulum Switch is a pretty cool continuous trap. It just says once per turn we can either target a card in our Pendulum zone and special summon it to the field, or target a Pendulum monster on our field and place it into a Pendulum zone. So this is the card that kind of gets things going. This card allows us to take our Aether from our Pendulum zone and summon it on the field. This will of course trigger Aether's effect to banish a monster, and of course is also just gets it out on the field. And then of course during a subsequent turn, if we have a Pendulum monster on the field in a free Pendulum zone, if we attack or if our opponent's looking to threaten to remove Aether or something like that, we can just put it right back in our spell and trap card zone, make ourselves nice and safe. Now we could only use 1 of the 2 effects per turn. It would be cool if you could throw it in and out, but that would be incredibly even more strong. It is good enough as is, and of course, it is what this deck revolves around. Next, going to play some of our win cons here. Summon Limit, 3 Summon Limit, and Summon Limit is really good in this deck. Summon Limit says that neither player can summon more than 2 times. We're definitely, per turn, we're definitely not going to be summoning more than 2 times. And this card is really good because we can, our opponent can start playing cards, they can summon a monster, they can summon their second monster, probably to go into an extra deck monster. We can then hit them with the Summon Limit, which will kind of end their turn. And of course, when they want to commit to battle or just when they want to pass on their monsters, we can then summon out our Aether, the Empowering Dragon, with Pendulum Switch on their turn, and banish one of their monsters, leaving only 1 monster left that we can clear out and banish in order to repeat the process next turn. So Summon Limit is definitely what makes this deck win, because it combos so well with it. It's it's a very disruptive card. If our opponent can't get in out to it, they're going to have a tough time. Next, I'm also playing 3 copies of There Can Be Only One. Most of the time, our board is just going to be Aether, the Evil Empowering Dragon. And if it's not, it's just because we have extra Skull Crobat Jokers who are on the field, which is a different monster type. So There Can Be Only One is a powerful trap card just because it hoses out so many matchups. Each player can only control 1 monster of each type, and if they were to control any more monsters of the same type, they have to send monsters to the grave till they only control 1. So that's pretty nice. Definitely limits our opponent's plays. In some decks, they might summon their first monster, and we flip There Can Be Only One, and they're done playing. And of course, that means at their end phase, we can summon our Aether, the Empowering Dragon, banish their 1 monster, leaving them open for a direct attack, which is pretty nice, and just a good card to have. Next, we're playing the 3 Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute is, of course, a pretty cool card. When a monster is summoned, we're wiping all monsters on the field. That combos pretty well with Summon Limit. If our opponent summons 2 monsters, we wipe the board and then flip Summon Limit. They're done summoning monsters, which, is kind of ends the turn for them, leaves them open to direct attacks, which is pretty cool. And what's nice is with Pendulum Switch, we can protect our own Aether from getting torrential, because if we have Aether on board, we want to do a Torrential Tribute play, we can use Pendulum Switch, if we haven't done so, to put Aether back in the Pendulum zone. Or, of course, we can wait till after Torrential Tribute is played and summon Aether on a follow-up if it's already in our Pendulum zone. So just a good card to have. It's cool that this card searches. It combos well with Summon Limit, so I can't not play it. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Solemn Judgment is pretty nice. We pay half our life points to negate a monster summon or a card, a spell or trap activation, and this is good for protecting our win cons. Do we not want to lose Pendulum Switch? Do we not want to lose to Harpy's Feather Duster? Are they trying to out summon limit? Well, we can say no to that with Solemn Judgment. So definitely got to keep these handy and play them wisely in order to stop us from losing our win con. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Lost Wind. Lost Wind, I feel, is especially good in this deck because Aether only has 2300 attack, so Lost Wind's ability to reduce the attack of a special summon monster in half is pretty good, especially if they summon a monster and look to attack over Aether. Um, and not only that, but it also negates the effect of that special summon monster, which is very handy, especially if they're like trying to out summon limit, you know, going to Nightmare Phoenix, use its effect. We can hit it Lost Wind, summon limit's still up, so they're probably done playing their cards. That puts them in a tight spot. And of course, the recursion on Lost Wind is nice because when this card's in the graveyard and our opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, we can set it so it can be used again, but banish it when it leaves the field. So Lost Wind is a very cool card to have at 2 of. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Solemn Strike. Solemn Strike is in here. We pay 1500 life points to negate a monster special summon, which has to be a mechanical special summon, like from the extra deck or whatnot, or a monster effect. This card is nice and also combos well with Summon Limit because when our opponent commits to their first big extra deck monster, we can Solemn Strike it, and then afterwards on a separate chain, we can play Summon Limit to put them in a spot where they can't necessarily summon any more monsters. So it's a good card to have, and we definitely want to take care of some monsters that get special summoned that are maybe trying to wall Aether and can be a bit of a problem. Next, I'm playing 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. Waking the Dragon is in here just as a failsafe, just a fun way to punish the Lightning Storm and Harpy's Feather Dusters that a deck like this fears. Waking the Dragon simply says that if this card is, if this card in its owner's control has left the field because of an opponent's card effect and is now in the graveyard or banished, you can special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck. So that's pretty good. We're not going to use extra deck monsters in this deck, so we're just going to load our extra deck with WinCon monsters. I will include my clip about the Waking the Dragon extra deck at the end of this, at the end of this video, and you'll be able to see all the good targets. And last, I am playing 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. Heavy Storm Duster is just a nice card if you're playing against back row decks or spell and trap card decks, which, this is a casual deck, so against more casual matches, I see a bunch more of those, which is why it's in here. We target up to 2 spells and traps and destroy them in exchange for a battle phase. Not a big deal, because we're mostly going to play that during our opponent's turn. And, getting able to plus off that is pretty nice. It'd be cool if Aether could banish any card on the field, not just monsters, but since it is, having spell or trap removal is good. If, of course, you're playing a deck like this and you don't have to worry about spells and traps, you can easily sub this out for any other beneficial trap card. And that is it for the trap cards. Next, going over our extra deck really quickly, this is not a deck where we, combo off and summon a lot of extra deck monsters, so our extra deck is just being used for us to be able to play and or side Waking the Dragon. Waking the Dragon is a trap card that says if this set card in its owner's control has left the field because of an opponent's card effect and is now in the graveyard or banished, you can special summon a monster from your deck or extra deck. So we're going to put powerful monsters in our extra deck to summon off of Waking the Dragon if it were to get destroyed by an opponent. And, when you're playing trap card based decks, you got to be aware of Lightning Storm, Heavy Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, stuff like that. And having a card to punish them for wiping your back row is pretty awesome to have. Now getting into my choices for Waking the Dragon targets, I'm playing 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet. If your opponent pops Waking the Dragon and they don't have any monsters on board, you can summon this card, and it essentially says that neither player can summon monsters. So they can't summon monsters, all they can do is set, and if they don't have an out to this card, you'll just poke them down till you win the game. Do note that when it's summoned, it will destroy all your monsters, but usually not a big deal for that the advantage that it gives you. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Naturia Exterio. This is the target that we can summon if we're in a matchup that is very dependent on spell or trap card activations. If we have a card in our graveyard, we can essentially negate as many spells and traps as we want during the duel, because when a spell or trap card is activated, we just banish a card from our graveyard, send the tap card of our deck to the graveyard, and if we do, we negate the activation and destroy the card. It's not limited to once per turn. We can use it reactively, so in certain matchups, this card will just outright win you the game. Next up, I have 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. This is a 3,500 attack monster that's unaffected by card effects. That can be very hard to deal with for a lot of decks. It means we either gotta kaiju it, or you gotta find a way to get over it by battle. And, that makes it pretty hard to deal with. If a deck does not have access to either of those, and they can't deal with this card, it'll just win you the game. So do keep that in mind. Pretty good monster. Annoying to remove. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of Geomathmic Final Sigma. It's just Ultimate Falcon, but with 500 or less attack, giving it 3,000 attack. And it's unaffected by card effects except Mathmech cards while in your extra monster zone, which is fine. There's not going to be anything else there, so we'll gladly summon it there. It does have one little effect over Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, which is if it does battle damage to your opponent by battling a monster, that battle damage is doubled. So that can come in handy if your opponent has a monster with lower attack on the field when if this card is summoned and you want to do a lot of damage at once. So that is pretty cool. And last, I'm playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This is a 4,500 attack monster that cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects, so not as good as being unaffected, but sometimes still enough, in certain matchups. And in exchange, you get 1,000 more attack than Ultimate Falcon, and you get an effect where instead of attacking, you can just destroy a card on the field, which is it gives a little more flexibility. Definitely worth the slots. All these cards are maxed out at 3, so that I have some left in the extra deck, even after extravagancy a couple times, and there'll always be something to summon, as long as I haven't resolved all 3 extravagance before Waking the Dragon is destroyed. So that is it for my Aether, the Evil Empowering Dragon Pendulum Switch stun deck. So just a fun little deck to add to my collection that was pretty easy to put together. I mostly had these cards, and I really liked that Pendulum Switch interaction with this card when I saw how good Pendulum Switch was for the amorphage deck. So just something I thought I'd have some fun. Not an incredibly powerful deck, but definitely good enough casually. And, I've had some fun with it and definitely won some games. So thought I would show it off. Just something a little different that I wanted to take a look at. So let me know what you think. Anything cool you've done with the card Pendulum Switch, I'd love to know. Thanks for checking out the video. I'll catch you all in the next one.